What's going on, guys? It's Tosker, and in the last video we finished up our machine view model. So now we have everything we essentially need to start binding to our main window view here. So now we can start binding our controls like our text blocks and our buttons to actually interact with the code we have produced. So we're really going to be able to look at all the work we actually did become a functioning product. So first thing we need to do is we need to go to our code behind of our main window, and we have to, like I said, our machine view model is going to be essentially like the center hub of our application. So we're going to bind our main window to our machine view model, or an instance of it. So here we're going to create a private machine view model. Going to have to hit Control period to put in our using statement for our view model's namespace. We're going to name this underscore machine. And off the bat, we're just going to instantiate a new object of it. Then we need to access the data context of our application, and we're going to set this to our machine. So now that we're bound to this, we can hop over to our main window view. And now we can actually start binding our controls to it. The first things we're going to want to bind is obviously our machine product. So our regular diet, orange, and grape sodas that we named in our machine view model earlier. So we're going to scroll down to our list view here. And here we're going to have to bind its item source property, and we're going to do a curly brace binding, and we're going to bind this to items. So since our data context is to the machine view model, when we call the item source binding items, it's going to bind to our observable collection here. So now that the parent list view is bound to the items, we can start binding the text blocks to the specific properties within the item the list view item is representing through our list view item template. So we'll go down to our title here, and right now we just have a basic hard-coded title. So we're going to remove this and do a /caret, and we're going to access its text property, and we're going to call binding. Then we're going to access the information property that we put in our product view model. So information dot name, because we're accessing the product model, and then we're getting the name of that product model. Then for our price, we're going to do the same thing, /caret. Then we're going to type in text equals binding, and we're going to say information dot price. But we want this to also be we want the string formatted to display like with a $sign in front of it. So we're going to do comma string format, and then here we can type the format we want it. So I'm going to do the $, 0, and 0.00. And we're going to, it's already have our curly braces closed. And I was going to set font size, but we'll leave it right there for now. So what this is doing is it's binding a $sign in front of our price. And the reason we have this kind of weird format is because essentially this is going to say display a two numerical values after the decimal. So that way if we have $1.50 instead of 1.5, it'll say 1.50. Then we have our out of stock message here. which, if you remember, we have a visibility property that we're going to bind to. So again, erase that. We're going to do /caret, and we're going to access its visibility property. And then we're going to say binding out of stock message. So now if we are out of stock, it's going to bind its visibility to whether or not this message should be displayed. And here it says visibility is set multiple times, and that's because we forgot to erase where we initially made it hidden by default. So here we have this. So now that our list view is bound to our items, and then the content within each item of its item template is bound to certain properties of the item that it's representing, we should have a display in our list view. So now we'll just run the application real quick to make sure everything's okay. And as you see, we have our regular, our diet, our orange, and our grape, all with the corresponding prices. And then here are the buttons that will say we've purchased this specific item that this button is inside. Okay, so we'll close that. So seeing as how we have a button in each item, when we click this button, we want to let our machine view model know what specific item was this button representing for purchase. So we'll do this by modifying our button, and again I want you to note that this is slightly against the principles of MVVM, and it's because we're not implementing the command usage in WPF, which we will cover in another tutorial. But as for now, we're going to keep things fairly simple. So we're going to get the button's data context property, and all we're going to do is just call binding. So this is going to bind the data context of our button to whatever list view item this button is in. So if for the product view model, if this specific list view item is bound to the regular soda, then the button data context will be bound to a regular soda. So that way we can pass its data context as an object and then cast it like we did in our machine view model. Next, we also need to add a event. So if we click our button, we go over here to the little lightning bolt in our properties panel. We can see we have a click event. And we're going to simply name this purchase underscore clicked. And when we hit enter, it should bring us to our code behind. And here we have our purchase clicked. So now we need to call the machine purchase and send it our button's data context, which is bound to the product view model. So first we need to create var button equals, and we have our sender parameter, which is our button, but since it's as an object, we need to cast it, so we'll call as button, which will create us a button variable for access to our control, and then we are going to say machine dot purchase our button's data context. So we casted this object as a button, and we obtained its data context, which is then going to send an object to our purchase, which then will cast it into a product view model. So now we'll go back to our main window, and we'll take a look at what other properties we need to bind. So we're going to scroll down here, and now we're going to see our 25 cent, 50 cent, and 75 cent buttons. Now, we don't need to do any binding here, but we do need to associate some events with them. So here we're going to, again, go to our events by clicking our button and going to our events over here. And this we're going to say insert 25 clicked. And before we do any logic, we're just going to do this for each. So we're going to say insert 50 clicked. And we could, we're having a little code duplication here, which we could avoid, but for simplicity, we're just going to keep it like this. And we're going to say insert 75 clicked. Okay. So now we actually have our insert change events when we click the buttons, and we need to call the logic that's appropriate for these buttons. So we're going to call our machine, and if you remember, we created a insert change, and we're going to say 0.25. So we're going to insert a value of 0.25 for 25 cents, and we're going to copy paste, and we're going to do 0.50 and then 0.75. So now we can call the insert change method in our machine view model, and we're going to go back to our main window here, and we're going to scroll down again, and you'll see we have our inserted and change. So right now these are hard coded to just say inserted $0.00. So now we have to bind these to our bank properties that are associated with our inserted money. So we're going to erase all this, then do a /caret, and then we're going to access the text property. We're going to call binding, access the bank property in our machine view model, and then access its inserted property. And like we did above in our products list view, we need to format this. So we're going to say string format and 0 with a $sign. Then we'll simply copy paste. And we got to erase that trail there. So now we have our inserted, and just change this to change, and it seems we do have a little problem here. This is supposed to be bank. So I don't know if that happened for you guys, but double check that. Might have been an IntelliSense bug. So we have our bank inserted and our bank change properties. So I'm going to go to start, and we're just going to see if now our buttons and our display properties for our inserted change is accurate. So top should be inserted, bottom should be change. So if I add 25, 25, 75, $1, $1.25. Now notice also we're getting the 1.5, and that's because we didn't format it like we did above for our list view. So if we go to our list view, we can actually just copy our string format there and paste it here. But this time we're actually going to say inserted with our $sign and then change with our $sign. Next we have our inventory panel here, which displays our current inventory, and then I believe, yes, okay, so this will display our current inventory, and we need to bind this to our items. And unfortunately we are going to hard code just our 4 items, so if you add in another item you would have to go back to the XAML and fix that. But like I said, this is mainly just a small project for demonstration, so I'm not going to be too concerned about disregarding certain principles. So we're going to get to our first text block here, and we're going to erase the trailing there and do a /caret. And here we're going to do text, binding, items. So we're going to call our items collection, and we're going to access the first item by doing the index of 0. Then we're going to say dot inventory display. So if you remember in our product view model, I'll hop back to real quick, we had our inventory display string, and this formats it like such. So it'll return regular soda, whatever the model name is, and the quantity we currently have. So we're going to do this for the remaining items. Just some simple copy paste. And here we just have to change the indexes of the items we are bound to. So I would run it, but right now we didn't add in our manager refill. So we're just going to have a quantity of 0 for each of these items. Which means this is exactly why we need to go down to our buttons now, and like we did for our change buttons, we need to add in some events. So we're going to click our first button, get its click property, and we're going to say refill clicked. And again, before we get into some logic, we're just going to create all these events. So we'll go to our second button, and we'll say empty clicked, back to our window, and we'll say withdraw clicked. So now that we have our 3 events here, we just need to do the simple logic by calling our machine view model. So we're going to call our machine. We're going to call its refill method for our refill event. We'll go down, call our machine again. Going to call its empty method for the empty event. Then we're going to call our machine one last time, and we called it collect payments. So now when we click our refill or our empty, it should do so. And we'll run our application now. As you can see, it's automatically going to display 0, 0, 0, 0 for our quantities. But if we hit refill, it'll go to 10. And if we purchase, we'll insert 50 cents, purchase a regular. Insert 50 cents, purchase a regular. And we're going to continue doing this just to test our out of stock message. So one more. Uh-oh. And you'll notice now we're not getting our out of stock message. So let's go back over to our main window, go to our list view, and let's see. So visibility, binding, out of stock message. So that seems to be correct. Let's go to our product view model. Look at our out of stock message. Yep, everything seems to be spelled okay. Oh, and if you look, we accidentally set our visibility.hidden both times, which is an error on my part. And I actually think I might have corrected this if you guys visit my WordPress. So we're going to, let's see, if our quantity is greater than 0, we want it to be hidden. But if it's not, we actually want it to be visible. So now, if we run our application, should get this, refill supply, bunch of regular sodas. Oh, that's our problem. Now if we look, it is displaying, but the problem is there's no content. So we need to access our text, say out of stock. It's always the little things that you don't catch. It's the most simple ones that cause the biggest problems. So now if we run, okay, and this is actually what I should have used to see if it was working in the first place, is now it'll say out of stock even if we don't refill and buy it, because obviously they are still out of stock. Then if we refill our supply, we obviously now we will have the out of stock message not displayed, and we'll buy a bunch of grapes. And as you can see too, our inventory is changing of our grape soda. Let's say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and now it'll display our out of stock message. So we got that fixed. I apologize, but hey, I make the mistake, so maybe you don't have to. One last thing we want to do though is we want to actually be able to view our earnings. So we go to our inventory. We can view the inventory of our products, but as of right now we don't really have anything to actually view the amount of money the machine has collected to maybe know if we want to collect it or not. So right above our inventory title, we're going to create a new text block. We're going to call docPanel.doc bottom. And then we are going to say style a static resource that we created in our app.xaml customer label, so we can have it look like our other controls. And then we're going to say text binding bank total, and then again we're going to want to call a string format, and we're actually going to copy this string format. Make sure we are syntactically correct here. Okay, so now we have our bank total, and we have a little error here. An attribute name is missing, and that's because we did not close our text block here. Oh, and it keeps doing this to me, the damn IntelliSense. We want to change this to bank.bankTotal and change our change to earnings. So now, if we run our application, should be displayed an initial earnings of $0.00. Refill our supply. We'll say 50 regular. So now we have earned $1 so far from people who have bought from our machine. Say we want to buy a grape soda. Now we have $1.50. And then also we can test our change property here by, if I put in 75 cents and I buy a regular soda, it'll say it returned to me 25 cents. Then I can do 50 cents, buy a diet, and then so this is adjusting for us. We also have our empty supply. So if I wish to empty my supply, if it's all, let's say, out of date, I hit empty supply, it'll clear all our items. And then down here in our console, hopefully you can read that it says machine has been cleared, which is the console output we put for it. And we can also refill it again, and then machine has been refilled. And then also, if I wanted to withdraw the $2.75, I could do withdraw payment. And we did not. Oh, yep, there we did. Collected payments, $2.75, and now the machine has $0.00 in it. So, this is probably the quickest of all the videos, which is why I saved it for last. This is why, when working with WPF, generally you want to get the whole skeleton of the application going and all the logic, because binding is really quick. And now if we ever wanted a totally different view in a different window, we have everything we need to do it. All we have to do is create the design and bind the properties to it given its data context, which is our machine view model. So you can see how WPF really does make your application more flexible for extension or change. It doesn't have really any dependency other than we just set its data context and call a few events. Which also in MVVM, you wouldn't even need to worry about the calling of events because we would be working with commands. Which, if you are interested in that, leave a comment below, and if I know people are interested, I will certainly do that for my next tutorial. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm still learning how to teach people how to learn, so bear with me. Just all I ask is leave comments, let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, how you think I could improve explaining things or giving examples, and pretty much any criticism. I love praise, but I really do value criticism because I can't get any better if nobody criticizes me. So if you like the video, like it, obviously, or upvote it in VidMe, and follow me or subscribe to me, depending on if you're on YouTube or VidMe right now.